So here's our roadmap for how we're going to break this down today. First, we'll meet the gametes. Second, the size divide. Third, the fertilization journey. Fourth, we'll look at nature's variations. And fifth, we'll explore what happens when things go wrong.
All right, section 1, meet the gametes. Well, our entire story starts right here, at the microscopic level, with a single gamete. A gamete is a highly specialized reproductive cell. Now, regular body cells, like your skin or muscle cells, are what biologists call diploid, meaning they carry 2 complete sets of chromosomes. For a human, that's 46 in total. But a gamete is haploid. It's produced through this really special cell division process called meiosis, and it carries exactly half of that genetic blueprint. That means a human gamete carries just 23 chromosomes. They're literally just waiting to find their other half.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, because these two players take wildly different approaches to this whole mission. The male gamete, the sperm, is basically a highly streamlined carrier. It is built purely for speed. It's stripped down of almost everything except its genetic payload, some energy-producing mitochondria, and this whip-like tail called a flagellum. But on the other hand, the female gamete, the egg or oocyte, doesn't move on its own at all. Instead, it's like a well-stocked safe house. It's packed with cellular machinery, nutrients, and all the genetic programming needed to actually support a developing embryo for nearly a week after conception.
Which brings us right to section 2, the size divide, or anisogamy.
Okay, remember that question I threw at you at the very beginning? Biologically speaking, across the entire animal and plant kingdoms, sexes actually aren't defined by outward physical appearance or even by specific chromosomes. They are defined strictly by gamete size. Males are defined as the sex that produces the small, mobile gametes. Females are defined as a sex that produces the large, nutrient-rich gametes. This bimodal size distribution, known as anisogamy, is literally the fundamental evolutionary divide between the sexes. To really wrap your head around that stark size contrast for humans, check out this number. The volume ratio of a human egg to a single human sperm is a mind-boggling 2,000 to 1. The egg is just a massive, massive target compared to the tiny microscopic sperm cell that's desperately trying to reach it.
Let's move on to section 3, the fertilization journey.
And honestly, this number brilliantly illustrates just how insanely difficult that journey is. Out of nearly 200 million sperm deposited during a typical human ejaculation, fewer than 100 actually make it deep within the female reproductive tract where the egg is waiting. Talk about a grueling marathon. In fact, sperm only propel themselves at about 12.5 centimeters, so like 5 inches an hour. They're swimming against the current, entirely relying on the female reproductive tract's natural contractions just to help them along. Now, for the incredibly lucky few that actually survive that marathon, the fertilization process itself is like this high-stakes obstacle course with some very distinct, very crucial hurdles. First, the sperm has to get chemically active by shedding some of its outer protective layers. Next, it actually has to break through the egg's heavy shielding. Once a path is clear, it fuses its outer membrane with the eggs. And finally, the egg immediately locks the doors behind the winning sperm. Let's actually take a closer look at how they break in. Because the egg, it's essentially a biological fortress. It has this incredibly thick outer shield of protective cells that are glued tightly together. A single sperm actually doesn't even have the biochemical power to break through that on its own. So dozens of sperm have to work together, kind of acting like a biological drill team. They release these powerful digestive enzymes from their heads to slowly melt that cellular glue. It's only after they've collectively carved a path that a single intact sperm can finally bind to the egg's tough inner envelope. But the exact split second one single sperm finally fuses with the egg, it triggers this massive electrical and chemical shift, a huge surge of calcium ions from right inside the egg. This calcium wave acts like a blazing biological alarm system. It instantly hardens that inner envelope. This locks the door and absolutely prevents any other sperm from entering, which is a vital, life-saving protection, because if multiple sperm entered, the genetic math would be completely ruined. And just like that, the epic journey concludes inside the cell as the genetic material from both parents swells, meets, and finally fuses. The 23 chromosomes from each parent unite to beautifully restore that magic number of 46. The haploid gametes are officially gone. In their place is a brand new, totally genetically unique diploid cell, the zygote. And the very first cell division is just about to begin. Let's pivot a bit for section 4, nature's variations. Because while human fertilization is totally mind-blowing, it's really just one strategy.
If we look at flowering plants, like the model organism Arabidopsis, we see a completely different approach called double fertilization. Here, the male gametes, the sperm cells, don't even swim. They are completely immotile. Instead, they get delivered via a growing pollen tube that navigates deep down into the flower. When it finally arrives, one sperm fertilizes the egg to form the plant embryo, while a second sperm actually fuses with a central cell to create the nutrient tissue that will eventually feed the growing seed. And even within the animal kingdom, the variations are crazy. Take sea urchins. They don't even use internal fertilization. They just release their gametes directly into the open ocean. The eggs exude these soluble jelly coats that act like chemical beacons, attracting swimming sperm in this massive, chaotic seawater environment. Or look at ants and bees. They use a wild system called haplodiploidy. In these species, fertilization isn't always required. Males actually develop from entirely unfertilized haploid eggs. That means, incredibly, male bees have absolutely no father. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, when things go wrong. Because as beautifully choreographed as all of this biology is, it is incredibly fragile and often faces some serious clinical and environmental obstacles. Right now, a major focus in reproductive medicine is gamete health, particularly for sperm. Clinical data shows that lifestyle factors like poor diet and smoking, or medical conditions like varicocele, massively increase the production of reactive oxygen species, or ROS. Think of ROS like a kind of biological rust. Because sperm have very little natural defense, an excess of this rust causes severe oxidative stress. It physically damages their cell walls and fragments their DNA, totally destroying their ability to move and fertilize. And as clinical sources point out, this oxidative stress doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's deeply, deeply tied to inflammation. In simple terms, stress causes inflammation, and inflammation causes even more stress. It's this vicious, self-amplifying cycle. And that completely disrupts the delicate microenvironment required to even make healthy gametes in the first place. So doctors will actually look for specific inflammatory markers, things like certain immune proteins or an influx of white blood cells in the semen. Seeing this signals a highly hostile, inflamed environment that significantly diminishes a gamete's vital fertilizing capacity, which often leads to complex cases of unexplained infertility. Bringing all of this together, when you really look at how fragile this entire system is, how much energy it demands, how prone it is to oxidative damage, how literally millions of sperm perish along the way, we really have to marvel at why nature invests so heavily in this dangerous, vulnerable, and incredibly complex process. So I want to leave you with one final, pretty massive puzzle to chew on. In an asexual population, a female passes 100% of her genes to the next generation, all by herself, with incredible mathematical efficiency. But in sexual reproduction, she only passes on 50%, and the whole thing has to rely on this chaotic, obstacle-ridden fertilization journey just to succeed. So if asexual reproduction is mathematically so much more efficient, what incredible evolutionary advantage makes the perilous journey of these two specialized gametes worth the cost? Think about that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.